Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 creative coach, and welcome to my vlog, where it's both my pleasure and my mission to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you and giving you specific takeaways, all so that your journey may be a little bit easier. Now, before I discuss kind of what I've been up to in the past week, allow me to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, in this past week, it was less about the creative side of things, more about the organizational and the logistical side of moving things forward. So, the big thing that I'm working on right now is this my second feature film called Autumn into Fall. You're welcome to, by the way, to check out more information about it on our crowdfund page. Link to it in the description. But, so that's kind of coming up, and, I had revised the script based on notes I got from a script doctor that I work with, and, now it's been passed on to him. My draft of it is complete, and so now it's been passed on to him. And so for me, really, it was more of the logistical side and getting things like that done. So, last week I talked about the creative side and also getting this guidebook done, right? A guidebook. I call it a guidebook, but it's essentially like the various protocols and principles for the various cast and crew involved. And this week it was then breaking things down further, getting things like the deal memo done, so that way everyone had a contract in place and felt comfortable. For me, then it was about breaking the script down and figuring out, okay, how visually, what does this look like, in terms of specific shots and certain sequences, also props, costuming, things of that nature. And basically just trying to plan ahead as much as possible, trying to get the rights to this one song in advance because it's a key component to what we have, and trying to get that to happen and so forth, right? So that was, in a nutshell, that's kind of what I was working on. And, the first point of focus was the deal memo. I had a version that I had done, and a couple of people, took a look at it, and they said it could work, it wasn't bad, but I was like, okay, and they gave me some pointers. And then I just had this realization of like, okay, let me just kind of go back to the drawing board. And I did, and looked at some other contracts that I'd seen before, and I said, you know what? Let me borrow from some of these, that can be used as templates. Both stuff that I've seen in my experiences, also just looking stuff up online and so forth, right? And I said, okay, let me do this, and so that was about Monday. I kind of really went through it and was able to, piece together something, and then I asked. People I know in the legal space, I said, hey, you don't have to be my lawyer and things like that. And whatever advice you give will be non-binding, but do you mind taking a look at this? And luckily there was someone, it's always intriguing to me. Like, obviously it's a service. It's a very costly service, and it's a very specific service because, there's many different types of lawyers, in terms of just how law works, right? No different than like if you work in the entertainment space, it's like, okay, you could be a cinematographer, you could be a gaffer, you could be a costume designer, you could be a screenwriter, right? These are all different disciplines within that same space. So it kind of, the logic sort of extends to the legal space. But this is someone, who's kind of versed in that, and they did it as a favor in that way, and really went above and beyond what I even expected or I won't say needed, but definitely something that I needed, but nonetheless, like what I would have envisioned from them. And they really stepped up, and it was it was incredible. And I say that for two reasons. Number one, you forget, like, for this person, that was fun for them. Like, it's, to them, it's a puzzle, no different than, like, my friends know they can call on me to help them with editing stuff, because I do enjoy that stuff, right? And so for me, it's kind of fun figuring it out, and I don't mind helping my friends. And that's how this person really viewed it as well, of like, this is something that she's good at, and so and she enjoys it, right? And so, figuring this out was an enjoyable experience to her. And, the other part of that, like I mentioned, like, I'm always willing to help out with my friends with editing and stuff like that. This is someone who's the same, and I really appreciate that. And, like I talked about with my crowdfund last week, it's really the culmination of me putting in years into that friendship, right? And not because that this was always my end goal. I certainly couldn't have predicted that when we first met. But, this is someone who's like, hey, you've always been there for me. You've helped me out. So of course I'm going to, and you've never asked for anything in return. So, of course I'm going to do this for you. And, it's kind of interesting, all the things we take for granted when we do it from pure heart. Because, like, for me, I'm like, no offense, like, I kind of do that for anybody, like, not in a mean way. It's like, you're not sort of special in that way. But it's special because so few people do that. And I'm not trying to, like, prop myself up in that way. Certainly there are far more people who are generous with their time and other things of that nature than I ever am or will be. But nonetheless, those things do stand out, and that's why I keep harping on it's important to support your friends. It really is, beyond just this idea that, the cool part is, like, it will come back to you in ways that you never expect. But it's just the right thing to do. If they're your friends, like, then you should want to support them. I said the same thing. My friend Lauren LaGrasso had a show, her first live show, and basically, since the pandemic. And, I knew it meant a lot to her and so forth. So I was like, all right, well, I felt comfortable to go. And so I don't begrudge anyone that, like, is still taking their time of getting back out into the world. But in that sense, like, for me, it was a very simple thing. It's not like, sure, I have things going on in my life, but it's like, I can take 2 hours to be there for my friend who, means a lot to me, and I know how much that, me showing up means. And not just me specifically, but just people in general, right? Having a crowd there to play in front of, and so forth, right? And man, it really was special. She took it to a whole new level. The people there were really into it, and it was just a blast, just all around. Her performance and everyone else, and the crowd that was there to see other performances also got into everyone else's. So it just became this really big collective sensation of everyone just having a good time. And after all, that's why we kind of make art, right? And so it was really special. And again, me going was not to, like, try to bank any sort of favors or whatever. It was just, I really support Lauren's music, and I knew it meant a lot to her. She is a friend of mine, and it's like, and I enjoy the music, right? So of course I'm going to go. Anyway, I sort of digress, but I think it's a point that is very near and dear to my heart, and that I wanted to hammer home, right? But anyway, so my friend that was looking over the contract, really, really helpful, meant a lot to me, and so I was like, okay, cool. And then I went back to the people originally that kind of that gave me the initial notes, and I said, hey, what do you guys think of this? I had somebody really go through it. I went through it, based on, like, my own intuition and so forth, and here's what kind. And I was like, okay, no, this is good. cool. So, sent that off, and yeah, that's kind of that, and that was a big major thing off my plate. The other thing about sort of people and just never knowing how things pan out, there's someone who I've known for, I don't think it'd be that far of a stretch to say almost a decade, not quite, but pretty much almost a decade. And, this is someone who had, much in the same way made a movie like me, where, guerrilla style, like just go, use pre-existing locations, film quick, that type of thing with people he knew. And yeah, they got the film on, and I'll be more specific about him in the future, in terms of like who it is and so forth. But right now, I'm just kind of being big about it for specific reasons. But nonetheless, this is someone who was doing this and really impressed me. And I saw the movie that he had managed to do, and he'd gone on to kind of do other ones since then. Those I haven't seen yet, but nonetheless, I was really impressed by, just that spirit, right? Because it very much was near and dear to my heart, and vice versa. We had seen each other not too long ago before this, and we're talking about and sharing these stories. And so, since that time, I'd seen his movie, and since that time, he's seen my first feature film, and yeah, there's just a mutual appreciation, and we scheduled a meeting just to kind of, get out of the house type of thing, catch up more meaningfully and so forth. And, during this meeting, he says like, hey, so, I would like to help you on your second feature film. And that meant a lot to me, and because I'm not used to, it's one of those things like, I think as creatives, for a lot of us, when we're, kind of on the come up and grinding away and so forth, and they're all passion projects, financially we don't have the resources to bring in on board as many people as we want. And, the list of people that would be willing to really help out is sometimes small, right? And so I've never had the luxury before of really someone of his stature, to say that, something like that. And I kind of said to him, I was like, hey, yeah, it's interesting because like there have been people who, have volunteered for me in the past. And he was like, listen, I don't expect anything in return. And I said, you know what, it's interesting. That's not what I was thinking at all. I was actually thinking, there's people who sometimes have, said that, but they're not as, their skill set doesn't match what I need, just to put it bluntly, in that way. But I said, with you, I know there's a comfort there because I know, if I brought you on board, you could handle it, and that means something to me, is what I said to him. He's like, oh, wow, thanks. I said, of course, like you've been through the trenches, you know what it's like. So yeah, of course I trust you. And and then we talked, and I said, if this is something that you want to be involved in, this is what it would take. This is what I'm looking for. And, in that way, it's complementing what I would need, what I bring to the table, he brings something else. Not that, I necessarily couldn't, but it's just much more in his wheelhouse. And so it's exciting having that thing, but it just very much speaks to the Field of Dreams quote, build it and they will come. And I say that because so many people that I talk to in my life and that I coach and so forth, they always like have this like, I need more support, and how do I get there and so forth. And I just keep going. You got to just keep going. You got to, it's not going to come by you just recruiting, and so you got to just keep building it, and eventually you'll attract the right people when you're meant to. And between my friend with her legal background to be able to help out with a deal memo, and this person to now come on board and basically be, a production coordinator, or whatever other term you want to assign it. That means, that's, yeah, it came at the time that it was supposed to for me, right? And that's awesome, it really is. And so this is going to make my life easier, and it doesn't mean that the work lessens. I still have to give it direction. So I went through the script and I was going through, okay, what are the moments? There's specific visual shots that I want to get in terms of sequences and so forth, right? So I went through the script and highlighted and wrote kind of details about that. I went through the script and made a list of all the props that would be used. Same thing with the costumes, based on each character, at least the main characters. I haven't yet gone through the secondary characters, but for the main characters, I did go through and, their, the story days, quote unquote, let's say, if it's a week, what are the outfits they wear on, quote unquote, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, blah, blah, blah. And I realized I flip-flop Wednesday and Thursday, but you get the point. So I went ahead and did that. And so that way, now this is at sort of my direction, and we can discuss that with the actors, and then, they can kind of really move forward with that, right? So really it is just all about sort of planning ahead and getting things done in that way, and just having someone that can check in on things that, and I can focus on the creative strictly, right? So that's exciting to me in a lot of ways. So that's kind of really what I've been up to in this way. Our second rehearsals will be July 10th, so that's exciting. And then from then on, we're going to have a series of rehearsals, kind of about every other weekend, give or take. Not exactly, but roughly. So that's exciting. Looking forward to that. And then before we know it, if all things go well, we'll be in Columbia filming. So yeah, things are moving ahead really, really well in this way. It's exciting. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to. Of course, there's other stuff, but this is the big stuff. So yeah, as always, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask away, whether down in the description box or hit me up on social media at Svitek. Would love to converse with you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to any of this. I hope it is of benefit. That's why I do this. Thank you. I appreciate you. I hope to see you next time.